time known as an accurate reflection. Yeah, is that right, Paul?
Yeah.
You okay? Come on, somebody propose and somebody second. Susie proposed, Rodney second. Thank you very much. There we go, that's that bit done. Thank you all. Yes, I've just mentioned about Claire and sitting in for Karen. Any declarations of interest? Not in the meeting, just in terms of conflicts of. No, no, excellent. And did we have any questions from the public, Paul?
None received.
None received, which is a little bit of a shame because children's services and the do a massive job on the island. So maybe at some point in the future we can encourage a question from the public. Item 4, progress on outcomes and recommendations from previous meetings. It's really just for you to have a look. Hopefully you've had a look, see if there's anything you wanted to bring up. The only thing I will bring up is the third item, annual fostering report. People were to contact me if they were advised of any difficulties encountered by foster carers in assessing face-to-face health assessments for their general practitioners. No one has come forward, but that isn't necessarily an indication there aren't any problems. So if we have any, if Stuart, I'm sure will let us know. Anything else on that item? Anybody? No. Excellent. Thank you very much. So into the exciting bit. All right, Safeguarding Children's Board annual report. Who's the lucky? Oh, Derek's online.
Good evening, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Marvellous, thank you. I will take my lead from yourself, Chair, and I will be brief. Hopefully, colleagues have had the opportunity to read both the covering report and the annual report itself. It's a statutory requirement of the Safeguarding Partnership to present and to prepare an annual report. And as I say, I would commend that report to you to read at your leisure. If I can take you through a couple of highlights. I certainly don't propose to take you through the report page by page, nor the covering reports, but I think hopefully the report, if you have had time to read it, reflects to your satisfaction the vision and approach that the partnership takes, which is around child-focused leadership, around agencies who understand their roles and are committed to safeguarding and well-being of the children and young people on the Isle of Wight. I hope we have a partnership environment which allows multi-agency practice to flourish, and I think the report evidences that. There is effective information sharing between the agencies involved in the partnership, and that was never more apparent than over the last 18 months or so during the pandemic, where, speaking for myself, I saw a level of partnership activity involvement that I hadn't seen before, and all credit there to children's services, to the police, to health colleagues and the wider partnership. People really stepped up to go that extra mile. That said, there is a culture of challenge within the partnership, and that is to be encouraged and maintained. And I think reflecting the sort of the practice that I see across the partners, we are looking to continually improve where we can. As well as the statutory requirement to produce an annual report, we have to produce a business plan that is divided into two sections. Part A, which is long-term strategic objectives, Part B, which is our shorter-term objectives. And we try and maintain progress against that business plan around the following priority areas: voice and lived experience of the child. If we don't listen to the children and our families that we're working with, then we are missing something. Safeguarding is everyone's business. That said, if we leave something to everyone, it doesn't get done as well as if we have dedicated professionals and practitioners, and that's very much the case, I think, in safeguarding on the island. There is a learning culture within the partnership from our audits and our reviews, and we try and do all of this with a culture, as I say, of openness and transparency. I quickly take you through the business plan priorities. Is around safeguarding adolescents, and hugely important. We think we have witnessed an increased pressure on our young people, particularly those in their teenage years, of the pandemic, the impact of what's happening in their social lives as well as their school lives, their family lives, has increased pressure on our young people. So safeguarding adolescents, hugely important. Well, our second priority is around understanding and reducing the rates on the Isle of Wight of children who become looked after. There will always be a need for some children to indeed become looked after, but that's something that we receive regular updates from the professionals on. Neglect is a perennial issue for this and every other safeguarding partnership across the country, and it will remain a priority, I think, as going forward. In terms of shorter term priorities, we're measured by the impact we have. Are we making a difference? Are we, as a partnership, helping those agencies to improve the lives of the children and young people on the island? So we look at monitoring that. We try and communicate what's going on as best we can, and Jane, Lee and the team, I think, do a fantastic job in their communication messages going out to the wider partnership and to the public. And we've had a particular priority over the last year, which has been a challenging year for everybody, as you're all too aware, but around the effective safeguarding of unborn and newborn babies. Aside from that, work as normal is around exploitation, is around safer sleeping, is around a focus on those children who are outside of the education mainstream for whatever reason, to make sure that they are as well safeguarded as they possibly can be. Chair, that was a very, very quick canter through the covering report. The annual report will be familiar to many of the colleagues in the meeting tonight. It takes on its usual form. It's there, and as I said at the beginning, I would commend the report to you, and hopefully, if there's any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Derek. I mean, thank you. That was a really good synopsis, but more importantly, I think for me, a list of actions still to be done and work going forward. I'll open it up to questions in a moment, but one I've got is, what are the handbrakes or the red lights you see as the actions going forward difficult to achieve, or the things that that keep you awake at night, as it were?
I think what keeps me awake at night, when I read and participate in our local child safeguarding practice reviews, some of the experiences of children and young people, after 36 years in public service, they still, and I think always will, cause concern. Whatever that learning may be around how agencies work together, around how we share information, how we communicate, whether we're displaying sufficient levels of professional curiosity, whatever it may be, the message is to get it out there to the professionals, give them the space to do the job they're trying to do, whether that's social workers, police officers, healthcare professionals, teachers. I don't think we can ever be complacent. I don't think we'll ever get to the point where everything is right. We are working with children who experience all sorts of complexities in their lives, and we owe it to them to do the best job we possibly can. Is there anything on the island in particular at the moment that's keeping me awake at night? There isn't, but as I say, that's not out of a sense of complacency. That's out of a sense of reassurance I receive from social care, police colleagues, health, education, etc.
Thank you. Any questions, Derek, from anyone? Rodney, Councillor Marsh. Down it. Yeah, carry on.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing anything at the moment. I apologise.
Reviews. It's got about promoting participation of both parents in meetings. Well, how successful has that been? And it says the learning workshops be delivered in summer 2021. How successful have those workshops been? Thank you.
I can only apologise. I lost all sound for the first part of that question. Sorry.
Yeah. It was on about learning from reviews. Can you still hear me?
I can, yes, sir.
Oh, good. Thank you. And it was on speaking about learning workshops, include the need to involve both parents in appointments and meetings. and learning workshops be delivered in summer 2021. How successful have those been?
In terms of how successful are we in general in having both parents involved, it will vary from case to case. It really depends on the dynamics in a particular family. That's not an issue that's unique to the Isle of Wight. There was a national thematic review published quite recently about hidden males within family context. Some of the reviews we've had over recent years beyond the island will tell us that it's not only the father of children we need to involve, but it's new partners in the family. In terms of the workshops themselves, I will have to get back to you on that. I will liaise with Jane Lee and I will give you an update in writing over the next couple of days, but I don't have that information to hand. I do apologise.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Any further questions, Derek? No, I think we're done. Thank you very much, Derek.
Thank you. If it's okay, I'll leave you to the. I'm off to Hampshire now to the launch of the adolescent strategy over there. So thank you very much.
Have fun. So on to item 6, SACRE annual report. Who's the Justine? Carry on. Just as an idea, if everyone presses their talk button now, just to warm everything up, it might speed things up later on.
Can it go off again?
Two bean tins on a bit of string, I think.
How's that? Oh, that's much better. Yeah, that's great. Nice to meet you all. My name's Justine Ball. I'm the Hampshire Primary RE Inspector Advisor, and I'm also the advisor to the Island SACRE. So what I'm going to do just over the next 10 minutes or so is just to give you an overview of what's in the presentation that I put in the pack for you all. So if you've got that, I'll talk through it. So I'm going to give you an overview of the work that the SACRE has been doing over the last year. Some of you will be very familiar with the SACRE, others not at all. It's the Standing Advisory Council for RE. The islands had that SACRE for many years. And can I just say, before I talk through the SACRE's work, they are a really great bunch of people to work with in a SACRE. They are very diverse. We have about 24 members. And the huge range of representatives on that SACRE is really something to be proud of on the island. There's a huge range of even just Christian denominations there, Methodist, Baptist, Church of England, Catholic, as well as other faiths such as Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, and also non-religious humanist members. There are also teacher representatives, counsellors, on the SACRE, and of course the Church of England. And they've met regularly over the last year, each term, as well as in subgroups, to really bring together a group of people whose passion is to support high quality RE on the island in every type of school, whether that's primary, secondary or special. They come together and they work for the benefit of everyone. So I just wanted to sing their praises before I go on, because they are such an important group of people to do this with. So 2 things tonight really to highlight to you. The first thing is to talk about the syllabus. It's been a huge piece of work. Every SACRE has to review its locally agreed syllabus for RE every 5 years. That's the legislation. The SACRE's been involved in that, been involved in many, many meetings and advisory groups on it. So I want to talk to you about that and the implementation of it. And secondly, it's just to highlight the support that's available for island schools. So there's 2 parts really tonight. And the thing that I'm going to focus on here is the locally agreed syllabus, which is on the cover for you of the notes, Living Difference 4. It's been revised and it's been adopted on the island. It was adopted in October 2021, and that will take us through the next 5 years until the next statutory review. So firstly, about the syllabus and the review process, because that's been an enormous part of the SACRE's work for the last 2 years. So if I turn over the page, and I'm just going to talk you through the review process, it's taken 2 years. We've done a really rigorous review, and the island SACRE has been involved throughout that process. So we began 2 years ago with a questionnaire to all teachers in Hampshire and on the islands and other areas that use the syllabus, to say to people, what did they like about the syllabus, what was working well, and what further support would teachers like? And the results were overwhelmingly positive. Teachers said, keep it, we love it, we like working with it, it's very helpful. Could we have a bit more help on creating a curriculum and on assessment? So with that in mind, we asked members of the Island SACRE, as well as other groups, to come together at various points, either as SACRE members or as teachers, to talk to us in more detail. And so outlined there is just a flavour of what the Island SACRE has been involved with. The chair of the SACRE has been to virtually all of these, the vice chair's been to several too, and members of the SACRE have come along and given their support to many of these things. We formally convened what we call an agreed syllabus conference. It's the legal start to reviewing an agreed syllabus, and that was in the spring last year, 2020. And of course, since then, we've carried on with the review, but we've done it online and sometimes face-to-face where possible. Something the island's been very, very strong at being involved with is meeting up with other SACREs. So they've met up as a body with other SACRE members from Portsmouth, from Southampton, from Hampshire, to come together to talk about RE. And that's the unique thing about the subject. You may only talk as an island for other subjects, but for RE, it's a wider involvement, and that's been hugely successful. So we've gone through those meetings, and this summer I work very closely with Pat Hannam, who's the secondary advisor for RE, and together we've looked at all the teacher comments and we've written up and revised the syllabus, keeping all the building blocks that teachers liked and providing more advice where necessary. So in October this year, the SACRE met to conclude that 2-year process, to hear about the final changes to the syllabus, to see that the building blocks were there as always, and to adopt the syllabus. And so that's been successfully done. Since then, we've moved on now to the launch of the syllabus, and one of you was here today at that launch too, in fact, on the 30th of November, and that's been online. We had several island schools who came to that launch, head teachers, RE leaders, SACRE members came along too, and in fact the chair of the Island SACRE presented a workshop at that conference. So there's been a lot of island involvement in that. So successful was that we're repeating it in January with another 150 people, and island schools again are booking into that too. So that's the first part really of saying what the Island SACRE has been involved with. It's that review process, which has been very rigorous. It's consulted the SACRE, the teachers on the island, and from all the schools, you know, primary, secondary and special, most important, all the schools contribute. So moving on then, the next bit really is just to give you a flavour of what's in the syllabus, and then finally to talk about the support for teachers on the island. So in terms of the syllabus, we've kept the building blocks teachers asked for, which has been the approach to RE in the syllabus for years. And that we teach RE through two things really. concepts or big ideas where we can bring in children's points of view and experiences, and also introduce how that is seen from a religious point of view, whatever the religion is in focus and whatever the age of the children. So the process is really clear. The syllabus itself, I put you the link to it later, it's 132 pages. There's just about everything in there, we hope, that people might think of or need support for. And it's free to access, and some of you indeed might have accessed that already for tonight's meeting, but it's free, it's easy to get to, and you can have a look at that in more detail. We've provided more information and more examples about putting together RE in a school to make a curriculum. What does it mean then if you take, for instance, a 5 and 6-year-old's RE and how that might build for juniors Key Stage 2? So we've given lots more examples as requested by teachers. And we've also given examples on progress and what we think might be progress, building blocks for understanding RE as an academic subject, and the building blocks for each religion, and for helping children develop their own points of view, whether they're religious or not religious. So we've put a lot of thought into that. Things we've introduced, and you'll see them in the syllabus, we've emphasised certain concepts as really important to help children progress to secondary school. So those are golden threads that are known as belonging and community, special and love. And we've looked at different nuances of that within religions and non-religions. Something the island's been involved with formulating really successfully is our chair of the island, SACRE, has developed some work on children developing their own investigations in RE based on things that they find interesting. And she's put together a large piece of work which is on the RE Moodle that others can use. And she gave a workshop on that at the launch. And that's been really, really interesting to see. Special schools have also worked together on what that might look like in a special school. But it's particularly picking up this idea of children being interested in something and being allowed to pursue it, you know, with some guidance. So that's all there on the Moodle. Particularly big shout to that because that's from the island itself. So do go and have a look at that. Really excellent work. So that's a flavour of the syllabus. Just coming on, conscious of time, just the final area. Now we've implemented it, what are we doing to support teachers? There's lots that we're doing in that regard. There always has been lots. And I just want to say to people, we've maintained that level of support and advice, whether it's been online in lockdowns or with restrictions, or whether it's been face-to-face. And that's something that we will continue to do in the years ahead. So one of the key ways that we work with teachers on the island is every term we have an RE network where teachers come along. There's ones for primary, special can come along to that. There's ones for secondary. And these are always well attended, and teachers come along knowing that they can ask questions, that we can discuss best practice and share examples. So things we concentrate on, what does best practice look like? What's best practice on the island? We share work, we magpie that, other schools take the ideas and develop it. That's really successful, and we look at sharing examples in RE News that we produce. We look at Ofsted too. Ofsted this summer produced the Ofsted Research Review on RE. They produced a lot of subject reviews. We hadn't had one in RE for about 8 years from Ofsted, last one being 2013. So that was really good to see, really positive. And we've been talking about that. We will keep talking about that in the year ahead. And we look at assessment and children's work. We share good examples and how to make that better. There's always ways to make things better. So that's a key thing for us. We also, I would say the island and Hampshire are unique really in having 2 advisors for RE for the subject. It's quite rare. I also chair the RE Inspectors Association for nationally It's very common not to have that. So we would encourage schools to always make use of us. They email regularly on the island. We'll come online, talk to people. We can visit if they feel they would like that. We can do it through Teams now. And also we send out regularly a free RE e-news. And something that supports island schools that they use a lot, we have 2 websites for RE. We have a free open access Moodle that you've got there in your notes. And we also have a second RE site that the Island SACRE subscribes to for all island schools. And that gives them lots and lots of planning, advice on the law, advice on best practice, things that they just can download and use. And so that's pretty unique, and it's there and they know about that. And finally, on the island, you have, and some of you will know this, a really good learning and development resource centre at Thompson House. That's excellent. It's excellent for all subjects, very good for RE. And the manager of that works quite closely with the Hampshire RE Centre to offer teaching packs for teachers that are discounted, to send out artefacts, to give advice. And so we work quite closely together. So all in all, schools have a lot of support in different ways, and they do use that. So that's great to see. And just finally, just the last page of my notes was just to summarise that we've had the training for the launch, that I'm putting on some afternoon training just for island teachers to come and talk about how they might implement the golden threads for the new syllabus. If they want to talk about the Ofsted review, that will be part of it. Best practice, I've put you the date down for that. And finally, I've put you the link to the RE Moodle. And the last thing to say is I started with the SACRE and I'll finish with them, because something I didn't mention is that they've worked tirelessly to go and support schools with visits, whether that's online or in person for their RE or their collective worship, or things like Interfaith Week. They've gone out and they've supported those. So big shout out to them. They've been really good on that. So I hope that gives you a feel for the last year and where we're going in the next year for RE. And any questions, please ask.
Thank you, Justine, for very enthusiastic. To be honest, it's quite clear you're very across the subject. You really enjoy it. And I think it's a lesson as well in there that what happens when schools come together to decide a syllabus. I know that's not possible under the subjects, but I think there's a lot we could probably learn from that. One question I have before I open up to everyone else is, are there any schools on the island that haven't signed up?
Signed up for the launch or
yeah, basically to use your Moodle.
Some don't sign up, but they might do the next year. Sometimes it varies depending on who's the subject leader. If they don't sign up to those, they can sometimes come to other training, because a lot of training now is online through Teams. They can come to that quite easily, whereas before they might have had to get the ferry and come on over. So there's a variety of ways they can access training, and they also tend to get in email contact if they haven't signed up.
Any questions for Justine?
Claire.
Comment rather than a question, as mine warmed up enough. Obviously, being on the SACRE board, I found it really enlightening that the RE subjects were put together differently from all our other normal, what's the other thing called? The curriculum, that's the word, the long word, the curriculum, so that how it differed, and it was really interesting to see how that was done, and really glad the work that you put together. And also, as a parent of a child during lockdown, I was able to actually put some of this into practice and see this, so it was really good, the golden threads and the belonging and community aspects to it, how important that was, and how I don't think my little girl realised how important those things were to lifestyle and how being part of her community and how she was. So those things were really, really good to see, and that it really was inclusive. You know, RE is inclusive. It's not academic. Their feelings were important. So I thought that came through really well in the report and through practically with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Any other questions for Justine? Councillor Downer, Rodney.
Well, yeah, just got to ask how many diverse faiths are taught through RE, and do they have, say, like when Eid and Diwali has been celebrated, do they have special events for those? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, good question, actually. Very difficult with the world of religion because there's so many religions. You could do endless amounts of religions and never finish, really. In the syllabus, we go for depth rather than a huge wide range of every religion, you know, with a scattering of knowledge. So what we say to children, the law says that you teach Christianity in the main while taking account of the other principal religions. And then it leaves it up to a locally agreed syllabus to think about what that might look like. So what we work with schools at doing is looking at Christianity, of course, and then a religion in depth in early years and Key Stage 1, which is children up to 7, choosing another religion in depth in years 3 and 4, so that'd be 7, 8, 9, and then another religion in depth in 5 and 6. And again, that would take a child up to 11. We also, in the review of this syllabus, wanted to acknowledge that schools were able to look at other religions if they felt that was good and right for their class. So, for instance, teachers said, sometimes we have religions in the class and we can't look at it. If we only look at one other religion in depth, well, they now can do that. It's locally determined, so they will look at and consider with us. They often ask, what should we do? What advice do you give? And we would say the Ofsted review, for example, talks about religions such as Christianity, Judaism and Islam, and the other religions which are called dharmic religions, Hinduism, Sikhism and Buddhism. And it mentions looking at both. So a longer answer to your question now is it depends for the school and what they want to do. But we would say make sure you do some of those dharmic religions as well as the Abrahamics, the Christianity, the Judaism and the Islam. And they know that they can choose what's right for their cohort and what's right for their school.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? David, Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just add to that, having sat on the SACRE board, I think for the last 4.5 years, as Justine mentioned, part of the review was very much input from the board. The board actually has 4 committees that have a specific membership. About 3 years ago, I attended the SACRE, the national conference, with another one of our members, and was actually delighted to discover that the Isle of Wight SACRE board was more inclusive and diverse than just about any of the other boards. And I think that's an important point to make, that we are absolutely blessed that we do have a very diverse membership of the board, which feeds into living difference and the range of views and beliefs that actually go to form that living difference syllabus. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you, Justine. Well done. Excellent. So, moving on. We're doing quite well, but I do realise Brian hasn't spoken yet, so I won't tempt fate. No. So, Ofsted, July 21 expectation. I'm assuming that's you, if you'd like to carry on.
It is. Good evening, members. If you don't know me, I'm Stuart Ashley. I'm Deputy Director for Children's Services, and I'm responsible for what we call the Children and Families branch, but you might think of it as Children's Social Care. So I'm going to talk to the slides that are in your pack. I won't go through them laboriously. I'll just pick out a few key points. I'll start with the first bullet point. You know that the Ofsted inspected Children's Services in November 18, and we were good across the board. That was the first time that the island's Children's Services has ever been good. And to give you an indication of where that ranks, out of the 19 local authorities in the southeast, there's only 4 others who have been judged by Ofsted in that category. So that gives you an idea of the quality of service. But that was 2018. Things move on. We've been through and are going through a pandemic since then. And Ofsted reinstigated their inspection regime, and they came back to us in July of this year. They call it a focus visit. it's still 3 weeks of my life because they start at day 1 and it ends on day 23. But there we go. That's just the way these things work. It is a really good forensic inspection of us, though. And so this focus visit was on children in need and child protection. So the core social work functions around safeguarding. And it's a helpful window for us as an authority to understand what Ofsted are thinking. I enjoy inspections because actually it's, if you get them right and you manage the process right, it's a validation that you're going in the right direction and you're delivering good quality services. So what do they tell us? Move on to slide 2. What they said was senior leaders have continued at pace with transformation. We've been introducing a new social work practice model. The pandemic hasn't stopped that. We've rolled out training right across our workforce, and we're starting to see the fruits of that strengths-based methodology that's more multidisciplinary in its focus. Third bullet point on that slide, well-coordinated and effective response to the pandemic. So we introduced a whole range of supports for our staff and our managers, guidance, to make sure that children were still being kept safe, that we were seeing children, irrespective of whether we were in a lockdown, children were in school or out of school. We worked closely with Brian and his team to make sure that every child open to social care was tracked. There was a risk assessment. So very vigorous oversight of those children. And that last bullet point there about the quality of practice, it's really important that I know about the quality of social work practice. We have a very rigorous quality assurance process. We undertake an audit of over 10% of our open cases across a year. They then moved on to give us feedback around our social work practice, and I would really encourage you to read, if you haven't, all of the bullets around the social work practice. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. The leadership helps, but it's the social workers delivering on the front line. So children supported by skilled, experienced, dedicated workers, frequent visits to children, child protection inquiries. So those issues when there are real concerns for children. Child protection inquiries are detailed through exploration of family histories and circumstances, good consideration of safeguarding measures and contingency planning. Again, on social work practice on the next slide, good consideration of children's needs and abilities, assessments written directly to the child, detailed family strengths and weaknesses. That's part of our new practice model, and they picked up on that. RAFT, which is our resilience around the family team, it's a multidisciplinary team. Really, it's a fantastic resource, actually, that we've developed, and I'm proud of it, as I think members should be. They deliver a range of really specialist interventions to families. And then social workers particularly skilled in working with parents who have experienced domestic abuse. You know, a significant proportion of the cases open to social care, domestic abuse is a factor. Maybe more than one, but certainly a factor. And then on to leadership and management. So management decisions are timely and appropriate. Really key point this, thresholds applied proportionately. So we're working with the families we should be working with the children we should be working with. Plans are regularly reviewed, managers are available and accessible. Culture of learning and development, something we've worked really hard on in the department. And staff feel well supported and safe in their practice. But as always, it's an inspection and you want to have some learning from it. And what we did, the quality of assessments to ensure better consideration of parental histories and previous agency involvement. So we've got more work to do to make sure those assessments are consistently of a high quality. There was a variation in the quality that they saw. Now, I could argue that they came just after a World Cup and just as the schools broke up and we were inundated with work, but I'm not going to make any excuse. We need to work on that. As you can see, we've delivered workshops around that already. We're using best practice examples to share with social workers and managers so they know what they look like. And then the next slide talks about further areas for development. What happens in an inspection is that you get some of the softer intelligence. We have keeping in touch meetings with the inspectors in the morning, and they say, these aren't going to be recommendations, but you might want to think about these things, which is really helpful. That's a good part of an inspection. And the bullet points you can see on that further areas for development are the things we pulled out and said, okay, I want us to focus on these because I think they're important to keep driving that continuous improvement. So, in summary, it was really strong feedback. To have a focus visit and have one recommendation, there is no judgment that comes out. It's simply recommendations. You can get areas for priority improvement. We didn't get that. We've got just one item, area for improvement, plus we've got some other areas for our own development. So I think, members, in summary, you can take a great deal of assurance from the Ofsted focus visit that children in need and children who are subject to child protection processes on the island are receiving a proper response and are being safeguarded appropriately. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Stuart. And I know you say it's 3 weeks of your life, out of your life. It's more than that, isn't it, really? That's the whole reason you exist, is to get us from where we were to good. And I have absolutely no doubt you will get to outstanding. Those of you that come to these meetings regularly will know what my next question is what are the things stopping you from getting to outstanding, and how can this committee help?
It's a journey, Chairman. So Hampshire is outstanding across the board, one of the top performing local authority children's services in the country. It took us 10 years of hard work, of consistency. The difference for me between good services and outstanding services are that it's got depth to it. And we have been on a journey here since 2013, when the partnership started. And so I think we're at the, I don't really like to get into the judgments per se, but I think we're a very solid good, if I can put it that way. The added value around our new social work methodology, getting that embedded, having staff that have the confidence to be able to deliver interventions across a range of different family circumstances, that comes with time and experience. We're lucky that we've got some fabulous social workers and other practitioners and managers. It's an evolution, and I think we're well on the journey. The improvements continue at pace, in my view. So no major obstacles, just maturity might be the right word.
Thank you. Thank you for your honesty as well, because it would be quite easy to either say, oh, it'll be fine, they'll just get there, or a list of tasks. And I suppose the point I'm making is this committee is here to make sure you can achieve that, and appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much. Any questions from anybody? Councillor Outlaw, T.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. One general point, first of all. It was excellent to read that further progress has been made since the Ofsted report of November 2018. So, it was great to read that in 2018 that we'd got to good in every area, and that kind of progress couldn't have happened without the partnership with Hampshire. So, I'm delighted to see that progress is continuing. So that's great. But I've got two questions. One really is for the cabinet member, and one for yourself, Stuart. I know the previous cabinet member was a fellow local councillor in my area as well. So we talked an awful lot, and I know he was passionate about this area of the work. And I know how hard he fought at the last budget to avoid budget cuts in this area. So my first question for the cabinet member really is, are you confident that you can avoid cuts in this area come the next round of budget? And for you, Stuart, with regard to the bullet points on page 76, the last one, which is the replacement of the current case management system, the procurement and the launch. Are you confident the launch is going to go ahead in the summer, and also that by that time all of the staff are going to be appropriately trained? Thank you.
I'm happy to take that first question. As I'm sure Councillor Outlaw will appreciate, that there are many facets to preparing a budget, and obviously you wouldn't expect me to go into any detail at this stage, but what I am confident in and what I can confirm is that the budget that will be prepared in the respect of my portfolio will not impact negatively on any safeguarding of our children, and I can absolutely confirm that. Thank you.
And in response to the question about the IT system, I can't help but smile. I've been replacing it in Hampshire for nearly a decade. I never knew IT was so complicated. But for the first time, I can genuinely sit here and say, yes, I am absolutely confident now that we will roll out our new system, Mosaic. We're rolling it out in Hampshire first, just for logistical reasons, actually. And if anything, that builds in even more certainty that the Isle of Wight will go live late summer after Hampshire. It's a web-based platform, which, and I'm already struggling here, I'm out of my depth. It's a web-based platform, but I think most importantly, the current system is so overly bureaucratic and outdated that it eats into social workers' time, and it won't let them move on from one screen to another unless they've ticked every box. Now, I want social workers out there working with families, not ticking boxes. So yes, I am very confident. All the milestones have been met so far. We've got green, not quite across the board, but we're in a confident position, and it will go live next year.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Claire Critchison.
Thank you. I was just reading in the sort of area for improvement, the quality of assessment and consideration of parental histories, and thinking about the barriers to being able to develop and get better in those areas. I mean, what are those barriers, and is it partner agencies? Is it getting that information from others? Is it needing to develop better relationships with those other agencies that would be able to give that information?
Thank you. It's a good question. I actually think it's our social workers and our frontline managers. The more experienced social workers and the more experienced frontline managers take a holistic view to a family. Now, some of our families will have been known to us off and on for 5, 6, 7, maybe more years. Experienced social workers and experienced managers look at the whole picture, the whole chronology of events, and then question, are we just responding to an isolated incident or a whole history here that we need to do something different? Less experienced social workers, not a criticism, it's just part of their development, and less experienced managers can sometimes deal with the incident that's presenting. And I think that's what Ofsted were driving at with that. And I think it's a fair challenge. And again, it's not an excuse, it's just contextual. When social workers are really busy, and in July we were immensely busy, that's more likely to happen because you're dealing with the here and now and perhaps not taking a step back to look at the whole chronological events in relation to a child or a family. So we're working on that and we're encouraging them. So a good example is when a social worker now gets allocated a new case, the team manager will sit down and go through the family history and supervision with them so they get a good understanding of not just what's led to the referral now, but what's been happening previously in this child's life. So it's just part of improving social work practice.
Any further questions? Councillor Rodney.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to ask about the actual turnover of social workers, Stuart. Is it stable at the moment? And I think that would you say that's the most important part in building relationships with the actual people that they're dealing with, because then they're going to be relatable, aren't they, and get better results. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. Part of our practice model is relationship-based. All of social work is about relationships, in my view. We're lucky on the island that our turnover is significantly below the regional and national average. Now, part of that's because we're an island, but part of it's because of the culture of children's services on the Isle of Wight. There is no attraction to go and work in Southampton or Portsmouth because actually people invested in children's services on the island. So our turnover is really, I don't have the exact figure and I can certainly provide it if you want to. It's below Hampshire and it's below the region. And I think actually, as I said, I think it reflects the positive culture of the service.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last question, it may be appropriate here or not, but following, as most of us will have done, the case of Child Arthur in this week, is there anything that is highlighted to Hampshire and Isle of Wight Children's Services that needs to change or that we may be in danger of falling into?
Well, in terms of Arthur, it's clearly a tragic case, and there's going to be a national review conducted, and there's going to be a joint targeted area inspection. A joint targeted area inspection is where Ofsted, the CQC, so the health inspection teams, and HMIC, the Magistrates Inspectorate of Constabulary, come together and undertake an inspection jointly looking at specific areas. I understand, I've been advised that the area they're going to look at in Solihull is the front door. The inspection regime that they're going to use is one that was piloted in Hampshire in November. That was another 3 weeks of my life subject to an inspection. And that was a pilot inspection, so the letter won't get published. But what I would say is the reason it was a pilot is because Ofsted and CQC and HMIC wanted to test out a new way of doing an inspection, and we volunteered in Hampshire. That inspection focused absolutely on the front door, so the MASH and just post to multi-agency safeguarding hub, where all the incoming work to children's services goes, and then just after the MASH to say what is the response to risk, what are the thresholds that are being applied when referrals are being made. Now that MASH is your MASH. It's the Hampshire and Isle of Wight MASH, but it was a Hampshire inspection. We get the letter formally tomorrow. As I said, it won't be published, but we'll share it with our staff, of course. What I can tell you is it was an exceptionally strong inspection feedback. I mean, exceptionally strong. We can be really confident, and you, as members of this committee, can be really confident that the thresholds applied in your MASH and post your MASH are absolutely right, and that children are being safeguarded. So you have that validation of your front door. You then have the focus visit and the validation of the response to children in need and child protection. That's really quite strong validation. You've got the 2018 validation of children's services being good. But we don't rest on our laurels. Whatever learning comes out from the Arthur review, we will look at, consider and apply it. If it's relevant, absolutely we will. But we're more than that. We're learning all the time. We're learning from, we get a complaint, that's something that we try and learn from. What I would say to this committee, and it's right and proper that I'm frank with you, if bad people want to do bad things to children, they will do them. And I can't sit here as your deputy director and say, I can guarantee there won't be an Arthur on the Isle of Wight or an Arthur in any other. There will be, not necessarily on the Isle of Wight, but these cases happen. You will remember Daniel Pelker. You'll remember baby Peter. They are awful and they are tragic, but they happen. And as much as all agencies will want to prevent them, it's not always possible to do so. But what I think you can say is your service is responsive, it's got the right thresholds, and it's dealing with safeguarding in a really strong way. And that's as much as I think we can collectively ask. A long answer, Chairman, but it's the right question, I think, to pose.
No, thank you. I appreciate the lengthy answer and the frankness, and I think that's important, especially following things like that we can be open and frank in these. Debbie. If
I can just add to that, I note from the action points from June that the committee, a visit to MASH is to be arranged. I appreciate, obviously, with the restrictions at the moment, but can I ask that that is kept very much to the fore? Because I don't know, I think some members here may have visited MASH. I've visited twice, and it really does give you an insight. Stuart mentioned the front door, and it's very much where we do excel, but it's a really good example. But to see it for yourself is really something, so I would strongly recommend that it's kept at the fore. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Stuart. So, moving on, the bit everybody waits for, performance and budget update. Is that you, Brian? Stuart, get a host. Oh, poor Stu.
Yeah.
I have got some data in the education as well.
I will let you speak a bit, Brian.
No, I'm fine. Carry on. You do so well.
Thank you. Okay. Excuse me. So this is our regular slot at this committee meeting, where I'll just take you through the performance and some other information, and then I'll hand over to Brian. So again, I'm going to talk to the slides rather than the report and just pick out the key points. Demand is high. I said this at the last meeting. I've said it in Hampshire. We are seeing a sustained 20% over and above normal. Now, how long has that been happening? It feels to me as if it's been happening really since Christmas. So it's starting to get to sort of coming up for a year now that we've been experiencing this demand. The good news with this demand is that it's what I think of as assessment demand. It's not translating into significant increases now in children in care or children on a child protection plan, which I'll come back to. But it is professional concern for children that's leading to this extra demand. And that concern is not misplaced. I'm quite comfortable with it. There is an element of over-referring to the MASH from the island. Again, I'm very comfortable with that, and I've spoken about it with the lead member. I think it's a positive sign that people want to share concerns, want to share their worries for children, and if it meets the criteria, and we know our MASH apply the right criteria, social workers will go out and they will be curious and they will undertake assessments. So that demand is there. It's been pretty tough for social workers, pretty relentless, I have to say, but we've got some extra resource and we are managing it. I'm not saying we're not managing it, but it's busy, and it's important that the committee know that we're busy. I'm not going to pick out any other points of those headlines. I'm going to take you onto the performance graphs because I think they're really, really helpful. They're more helpful in colour than black and white, personally. But if you look at contact, so these are people phoning up and emailing the MASH. What you can see there is, yep, you can more or less see the trajectory of the pandemic, but it is plateauing. We are starting to see things return to a near normal. The next one then is around referrals. So this is where actually the MASH say, no, we need to look into this more. We need to speak to the police. We need to speak to health colleagues and understand what's happening for this child. And again, you can see what I talked about with the 20% increase in demand. MASH has got additional social workers and other resource put into it. They're responding very well to it. But again, it's pretty relentless in terms of those referrals. Then you say, well, how then is Children's Services responding to that? And we know we have to undertake assessments. Our performance, despite the pandemic, despite the increased demand, I think that's something to be proud of, actually. It's, significantly stronger than the South East region. So good indication that despite that demand, the response is timely. Children subject to child protection plan. This is a really interesting slide. Well, that's probably because I'm geeky about this stuff, but I can't help it. But the reality is that for the last 18 months, 2 years, numbers of children on the child protection plan, so those children who are at risk of significant harm, have been reducing. The reason they were reducing, this is pre-pandemic, sorry, I should have said that, pre-pandemic. The reason they were reducing is because partners were signed up around the multi-agency child in need plans. They were dealing with risk at a lower level and preventing it escalating. When the pandemic hit, you can see it's pretty stark. The numbers went up. Families went into crisis. There weren't the same services around. The risk to children on the island increased. That was no different in any other local authority. It was a national response that we saw. The important thing is you can see that curve starting to come down again. So risk is starting to be managed at a lower level. Cases are being dealt with without them having to escalate. That's a really strong and positive indicator that the services are back in place around children, and that our work with schools in particular are identifying those children early and that we're stopping cases escalating. So I think it's a really strong indicator to the prognosis for the future, which is good. Children in need, it doesn't look like a big increase, but it was for our social workers. Those numbers are big. There was at one point, there was an extra 200 cases or 200 children in the system. That's a lot of extra children. But again, the numbers are starting to come back down, which is a strong positive sign. In terms of looked after children, this is an interesting one because we know that typically our rate per 10,000 children is higher than the English average. I get asked on a regular basis, why is our rate so high? Why are we out of kilter with Hampshire, Portsmouth, and other local authorities in the South East? Well, the simple answer is they are not our demographic comparators. Actually, our comparators in terms of demographics, in terms of poverty, are Torbay and Blackpool, and our rate of children in care compared to them is lower. So in actual fact, whilst we might be higher than the English average, compared to our comparator authorities, we're doing well. That line that you see there, again, that plateau, and it is a plateau from my perspective, is a really positive sign. It's reflecting that we're doing better than national in terms of the rate of increase. And I think we're starting to see the early signs of our practice methodology come to fruition. The next slide talks about caseloads, an important barometer for the service, particularly for social workers. You can see that we had a dip. It looks to me, I think, when was that? That was I think that was in the second lockdown. Then we had a spike of work coming into the service. And again, it's plateaued, and I'm confident that we're in a healthy place. The next and my final slide before I hand over to Brian is around quality assurance. We have a really strong model around quality assurance. Social workers sit with an independent manager and review one of their cases. We seek parents and children's views on the practice of social workers. We look at a whole range of performance measures. I do it on a county basis, so I bring Hampshire and the Isle of Wight together. It's a 4-hour meeting. We go through a range of thematics and our performance. And I have to say, generally, the Isle of Wight is in a strong place with that, and I'm satisfied that our quality assurance processes are giving us a good window into practice. So overall, despite the extra demand, I would say to this committee that the service is in a good place. We've got the resource that we need. We've more to do, of course. We won't rest on our laurels, but we're doing well. And at that point, Chairman, I'm going to hand over to Brian if you want me to take
Thank
questions.
you. If we do questions after Brian, if that's okay, Brian, if you want to.
To a quarterly report. Hooray! So the end of the second quarter is the end of September. So you've got some academic figures in there, but it isn't possible then to do a quarter two because it would have been whatever stat would have been at the end of September, and schools will have only been open for 3 weeks, which makes it ridiculous as a stat. So the first one that we report on is the September guarantee, and it's a really important statistic for us, this one. We have a duty to try and make sure that every child aged 16 and 17 ends up in a place of employment, education or training. And that's a good thing for every young person to be in education, employment and training. At the September guarantee for 2021, you'll see we were 98.2% of children, young people, were in education, training or employment. So it was a phenomenal start. And the national average was 94%. That's chased down by the Island Futures team. Next quarter, the end of December, I'll be able to report this year's September guarantee, but I'm pleased to give you a preview of that. We've come out very similar. And I think when you're dealing with an economy in the middle of a pandemic, to try and keep the figures of 16 and 17-year-olds in employment, education and training that high is no mean feat. It's a fantastic story for the island. The second one is around the production of education, health and care plans. We have a target around producing those within 20 weeks from submission. 90% of our EHCPs are produced within that 20-week time. The national average, last time I looked at it, was 55%. So again, we're outperforming really strongly the national average on that. Sometimes there's good reason why plans can't be produced in 20 weeks. And sometimes parents say to us, actually, we'd rather get the right plan than a rushed plan within 20 weeks. And if it takes 22 weeks, kind of so be it. But our performance on that is strong. The proportion of schools graded good or better by Ofsted, currently 75%. This was up to the end of September. You'll have seen in October, we've had Broadley Primary School that has moved from requiring improvement to good. So again, next time I report the stats, it will be an improvement on that. There's another school that has been inspected that's not in the public domain, so I can't name it, that has also gone from RI to good as well. But I don't know whether that'll be published by the end of December for me to include it in the next quarter stats, or whether that'll come through in the quarter after that. So, but again, that's good news. The number of children being electively home educated at the end of that quarter was 462, which compared to 375 the time before. When we talk to parents, one of the contributing factors around that is COVID. And I think it'll be really interesting, and you'll want to monitor closely over the forthcoming quarters, that if ever we come out of the pandemic, and it feels like if ever, doesn't it, given the announcements last night, whether parents will have more confidence in sending their children back to school. We've got a very high proportion of families that EHE that remain in contact with our EHE team on the island. There's over 90% remain in contact. The proportion, numbers of permanent exclusions and fixed period exclusions are for last academic year. By the end of Q3, I will be able to include this term's data, so you can see what's that looking like for the first term of this academic term next time. And again, I've got no examination data because the children didn't take examinations last year. We have got an attainment report coming to you in March, and that's going to be a real interesting report to write, given that we haven't got any examination data, but I will do my best to produce something that we can have a debate about. Thank you. Oh, sorry, the last one's on attendance. The national attendance data is really interesting. It gets published 18 months later than it actually happens. So the current attendance data that is on the DFE website is for 2019-20. The 2021 data will be published during the spring term. What I have got is access to a DFE data feed that schools are asked to do on a daily basis during the pandemic. And what that's been showing me is that the attendance both in primary and secondary has been higher on higher on the islands than the national average throughout the pandemic, with the exception of that January period when the island slipped from, I think it was a Cat 2 to a Cat 4 school, where we suddenly plummeted down. But attendance has been pretty good throughout the pandemic comparatively to other authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Before I open it to questions, just a couple. Quarterly reporting, if it's that difficult, is there a reason why we force you to do it rather than doing it by term?
I can live with it, and it actually falls nicely Q3, doesn't it? Because it is December.
Yeah. Okay. If it's not a problem, I'll leave it. And exclusions, is that high compared to elsewhere, or is that what you'd expect?
I would like to see exclusions reduced, and I think when you've got this next term's data, I think that will make for an interesting debate. And you've also asked me to produce a full report, and it's on the forward plan for next term as well. So I'll bring a blow-by-blow account of that, because my concern is the children that end up being excluded are some of the children in the most vulnerable groups. So it's the children open to social care, it's the children that are living in circumstances of relative poverty on free school meals, it's the children with education, health and care plans. And it is an area of real focus for us. We need to do better on it. So it'll be good to have a good debate on that in March when the report comes to the committee.
Thank you. Any questions for Brian? Okay, Councillor.
Thank you. My question's actually for Stuart. With regard to the page 82, the top of page 82, the Isle of Wight has had consistently high rates for referrals when compared to statistical neighbours and the England average. This is mainly due to the way different authorities count referrals. So I was just wondering if you could explain what the difference is and why would we count differently?
Yes, I will. It's going to get a bit technical, so I'll do my best to. There is no prescribed way of what we call a contact and a referral. So contact, as we count it, is if someone phones up and says, phones up our MASH and says, I want to go, I'm worried about my child's mental health. And they say, well, perhaps you should go to your GP in the first instance. So that's a health issue. That's a contact. If they say, and my child is self-harming, and then we think, well, we need to find out a bit more about this, and it goes through to our MASH itself, where they share information with the police and health, that we then count that as a referral. Some authorities don't. They count the first phone call as a referral. Some of them don't count it as a referral until it leaves and goes out to a social worker. So it's this front door mechanism, and it's counted differently in different ways. And we have said to Ofsted, you need to discuss with the DFE and have a consistent way, because otherwise we're comparing apples and pears. Final point I'd make on this is something I touched on earlier. We do have a high level of referrals into the MASH from island agencies as opposed to Hampshire. But we've encouraged that over the years so that professionals can air their concerns, seek support and advice. That's right. If you go back, we can't forget the legacy of the island in terms of its failure of children's services. That echoes within agencies for a number of years. I think the echo should be fairly faint now, but we're still encouraging people to refer, particularly schools. If you're concerned, refer to the MASH and we'll look into it. Hope that answers it, Councillor.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, we could be for an early finish here, and I want to tempt fate again.
Sorry,
sorry.
if I may, I've got another question actually. Regarding page 86, actually, this is probably again, sorry, Councillor Andre, this is for you again. It was page 86, the final paragraph before conclusions. It says, in response to the rise in demand as a consequence of the impact of COVID-19, further investment in social workers was made by the Isle of Wight Council in September 2020, and investment in temporary and permanent social workers. Just wondering, going forward, whether those social workers are going to be still in place or whether we're going to see them lost.
Yes, thank you for that question. I think the point I'd like to make is that, as we've seen from the graphs and the statistics, the impacts of the pandemic have fluctuated. And I think what I can say is that we are going through our transformation programme. We are enabling our social workers to work more effectively. And what we will be looking at to ensure is that we have got the right workforce at any given point in time to actually continue to provide a safe, effective and improving service. So I think, if I'm right in thinking, your question is more about, will we be making funding available to maintain that service? Well, as I say, what I'm looking at is, do we have the right provision for now and moving forward? And obviously that will come into our financial planning. And if Stuart wants to add something to that.
Yep, so in our discussions with the corporate management team, we've already flagged that actually, given the levels of sustained over demand, that we think that resource is needed going forward, and that's been well received. So I've no reason to think that if we need it, I'm confident that the extra resource will be there on a longer term basis.
Councillor Ellis.
Sorry, I can't see with my glasses on. It's probably a daft question, sorry, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Page 100, number of children being electively home educated is 464 compared to 375 last year. That's 89% or something. That's, you say COVID-19 appears to be a contributory factor in this. I would expect that COVID-19 would be a huge factor in it, but it's just the wording of it makes me wonder what the other factors are, because it's a huge increase.
It's probably the wording could be clearer. We ask all parents when they become electively home educated what the reasons are. And the other bit with these figures is you shouldn't think that's the increase in the number of children that are being electively home educated, because what will have happened also during that time is 100, 150 children will have left EHE to go into school, and maybe 300 will have come out. So there's a churn in the EHE community of in and out at any one time, and it's not the same children on any given day. But one of the main reasons parents give us is the pandemic. The other areas that parents tell us are things like, my child's got special educational needs. I don't think the school is meeting the needs satisfactorily. Other reasons we get are the child is being bullied at school. interestingly, we often get different reasons given to us when we ask the schools. So the school's reasons and the parents' reasons don't always tally. Again, I think it would be really useful at some point to bring a report to the Committee on Elective Home Education. They are currently working nationally on potentially bringing in a register to make it lawful for every EHE family to register with the local council. The other bit is the recent judicial review around elective home education that's just occurred in Portsmouth, which will have some consequences for the Isle of Wight as well. So I think at some point it would be good to bring a report on that, if that's okay.
Thank you. It's good to see that 90% though have engaged. That's encouraging, isn't it? Thank you.
Any further questions? Oh, sorry, Claire, and then T.
Actually, mine follows on quite nicely from Susie's there, which said that 90% was engaged. What are we doing? That's really good, and obviously supporting those. But what are we doing for the 10% that are not? How are we getting to include them and supporting those families and children as well, please?
So what we do is we have a informal RAG rating situation. So obviously if a child is open to social care and suddenly become elective home education, that case would be absolutely prioritised to ensure that we get engagement. With some families where we know they are getting a really good deal educationally, we may have been out 2, 3, 4, 5 years every single year to check on the quality of the education. We're happy with that. We might say in a particular year that's not such a priority for us to go out and check it. So when I say the EHE team, it's one person and some admin support, and therefore what we try and do is to prioritise that on the children we think are most vulnerable.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe that lady's quite well respected with the home education scene. So, you know, that's really good to see that they've got that engagement and that we can support that. Thank you.
Councillor Outlaw.
Yeah, thank you. It's actually for you, Brian, supplementary to the question that Councillor Ellis asked. You mentioned in your response that teachers and schools often, the teachers and the parents don't necessarily agree on the reasons for the homeschooling. For example, bullying. If a parent is saying that their child is being bullied and the teachers in the school are saying that they're not, does that raise a few questions with you?
I think it's about different perceptions. So the school may feel that a child is a perpetrator as well as a victim, and they may well be taking disciplinary action against a child for their behaviours. A parent's perception of that might be that their child is bullying and the school isn't handling it particularly well. So where the kind of truth of that lies, we never really know. But what we end up with is schools giving us one reason and the parents giving us another. The important bit for me is that individual child, if they are a vulnerable child and would benefit from being in a school, we need to work with that family to try and get them back into a school at the earliest opportunity. And that's where we try and put our efforts. And some of those children are definitely better in school. Other children do really well with elective home education. So that's not me knocking elective home education. It's just for some children that are vulnerable, not having eyes on them for me is a worry.
Any further questions? No, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Stuart. So moving on to the committee work plan. Rather than go through it all, if there's anything to add, please shout. I think I will add, as Brian suggests, a report on home education. Where we fit that in, I'm not entirely sure. It depends on when you can get it for, Brian, I guess. Is March too soon? Yeah, 3rd March, that's good. We've got exclusions on there, which I was concerned we haven't, but we have. The other thing to add somewhere in there is school governors recruitment and retention of. I think that will probably have to go into June, because I know you've asked for a report, haven't you, Debbie?
Sorry, I have actually at this point asked for a report to be ready for the 3rd of March.
Oh, perfect. Let's put it into there then.
Which will then go to Cabinet on the 10th of March, but I'm totally in Chair's hands on that.
No,
if you
no,
would
March is
prefer
good.
it to come to June.
No, let's bring
My
March.
reasoning for that was that any recommendations that actually come out of that could be part of a recruitment drive for governors that could actually recruit governors for the start of the academic year 22-23. So that was my reason for the timing. So
absolutely,
it would be coming to the 3rd of March.
With the Cabinet member on timing, I trust you entirely. And the other one would be, I think, based on the point that was made earlier, is something to do with social worker numbers, recruitment, retention. And I don't know where we fit that in terms of urgency, but just in terms of a report and I mean, it's good to know that the churn isn't as big, but it also seems to me to be a critical path in terms of achieving what you want to achieve as a service. June, yeah, let's go with June. Social workers. Anything to add, anybody?
Can I just check March then, because that looks like 5 reports and I'm a bit worried we might be skating over and not going into sufficient depth if we got too many.
It's a very good point. So is it best that we have a look, Paul, after this meeting to see if we move something around in March, or we just do it now?
We can discuss it with Ofsted.
Yeah, we do discuss it with you afterwards, just to make sure. It's a good point, Brian, thank you.
Chairman, if I may, I just would encourage this committee to receive a report on the youth offending team. It's an important element of the work that we're responsible for as a council and as children's services. I appreciate the agenda's packed, but just it's on the back of the very last page, and I do think it's an area of interest for members.
No, absolutely.
Can I just add to that I have recently visited the youth offending team and I found it to be an excellent example of multi-agency working, so I would endorse that.
Okay, so if we discuss this with officers afterwards, Paul, is that probably the best solution? Because otherwise it could be it's a bit like trying to find a spare date for a meeting, isn't it? But that's a good point. Thank you, Stuart, because those are things that have been brought up and are indeed extremely important. So thank you for that. Anything else on the work plan? Rodney.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I did give you a phone call about autism. Thank you.
You did indeed. We'll include that as well. Okay, so moving on. Members' question time. Oh, sorry, Claire, carry on.
Do we get a report from Youth Trust as well, talking about health, wellbeing, different developing areas? I don't know if that focuses in here at all, whether it can.
No, Chairman, we've never had a report from the Youth Trust.
I assume we could invite them to provide one. It would probably be useful. Oh, okay, quite a work plan now, aren't we? How exciting. Might take all 4 years to get through it. Members' question time. No written questions received, I don't believe, was it? So a free-for-all. Any members' questions at all? Anybody? No? Oh, crikey, we're going to easy. I will add something. Brian's already smirking. For me, this is not so much a question, really, as a statement, I suppose, to encourage you as what I see as an excellent performing team. Is the good news is always great, but what worries me is the things we're not talking about. And the facts and figures are great; they show us the map, but the emotions set the direction. And I don't want anyone to feel that we can't discuss emotions and feelings, that they should be discounted. I think sometimes as professionals, you will have gut feelings that should be listened to. So it's really just to encourage that. Please feel free to shout me down if you wish. But other than that, I've nothing from me. So if there's nothing else, thank you all. Safe journey back.